All right, we're back. Thank you for staying with us. As we told you right before the break, we have representatives from the U.S. Embassy with us. And so we have with us in studio a political officer at the U.S. Embassy, Sydney. Help me with your last name.
It's Scove.
Scove. Cindy Scove. With us, a political officer at the U.S. Embassy. And we also have Christine Valerio, who's the grant officer representative at U.S. Embassy, and they're here to talk to us all about CARSI, the CARSI 2022 program.
Yes.
Good morning, ladies.
Good morning, ladies.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for agreeing to do this and having this important discussion about this opportunity. What can you tell us about CARSI and this program?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having us. We're both really excited to be here. So CARSI ESF, or the Economic Support Fund, is basically a grant program that's administered by the U.S. Embassy. I think you must know a little bit about it. To support civil society, to support nonprofit organizations, kind of in their mission, working to promote transparent governance, accountability, and democracy, really in support of all Belizeans. And we're really excited because the grant application is open. It's live now. So that's why we're here today.
Tell us about why the U.S. Embassy began this program.
Well, these overarching themes, right, of democracy, transparency, and accountability, human rights writ large, these are incredibly important themes for the U.S. Embassy, for the U.S., and for Belize. And I think it kind of speaks about our shared values as countries.
As for Christine, I want to dive into the application process itself. So who can apply, and what are their qualifications that they need to have in order to be eligible for the application?
So the opportunity is open to legally registered nonprofit organizations, academia, and public entity organizations such as UNICEF or UNDP. So yes, you must be legally registered, and only organizations are eligible. In terms of the application process, I recommend that you take a look at the complete notice of funding opportunity that's available on our website. bz.usembassy.gov, and review the full details of the application so that you can, for the notice of funding opportunity, to see what the eligibility requirements are, as well as for all the parts of the application. We have templates that are available for the proposals.
Now, let's talk a bit about, well, first of all, you recognize that these are no small funds. This is large funds being given to organizations, local organizations. We're talking all the way up to 500,000 US dollars, correct? Speak, if you would, to some of the outcomes that we saw from previous CARSI programs, and how those kind of met the objectives that you sought for this program.
Sure. No, that's a great question. And you're correct. So what we have available is $500,000, and we are hoping to make a couple of grants with that money. So you're right. These are not small grants.
Yeah.
These are substantial chunks of money, and the hope is that they can really propel organizations to do amazing projects that are really inspiring and have amazing outcomes. I'll let Christine maybe talk a bit more about some of the impacts that we've seen from our past projects.
So some of the impacts, we have some of the projects that looked at addressing disaster risks. And so we had a project in the Toledo district with Humana People for People that looked at putting certain providing certain trainings to some of the rural communities in Punta Gorda. You know, we have some of the communities like
Machakila,
that's quite remote, so they provided resources so they can get telecommunication services. So in the event of a disaster, the communities have training and the resources so that they could respond and provide that immediate support for their communities before before like NEMO can get into the community and provide those support. We have other projects that looked at providing training for public officers, looking at building capacity for civil society organizations through networking with the Belize network of organizations. And it all was surrounding improving that governance, improving how do we improve service delivery for some of the vulnerable communities that we have.
What are perhaps some of the priority areas identified, if any at all, for this specific programs, areas of interest you're looking at to say if these types of proposals come up, we may consider these as priority?
Sydney?
So we do keep this a little bit broad. We're talking about good governance and democracy, right? So that does allow some leeway for organizations to be creative in how they propose different projects. But within that, we are narrowing our focus a little bit, and that's specifically on service delivery, as Christine mentioned. We're also looking just more at governance, transparency, accountability, kind of in the civil service sector, partnerships with governments to move towards that. And one more specific one we're looking at is counter-trafficking, and that focuses more on like citizen security, but also within transparency and accountability, I would say.
Would you speak a bit to service delivery and what it means? Because I've heard it come up more than once.
Definitely. So I'll let Christine give a bit more specific examples, but in general, it's about what services are available. So often what's available through the government that might not be reaching either remote communities or other communities, just given distance, given time, given space, given there are different obstacles, right, to having something available and then the distribution of that thing. So really trying to build those connections to make sure that people who need something, whatever that service might be, access to education, healthcare, curriculum, it could be any one of those things, making sure those connections are made.
You satisfied?
Yes, and I think Sydney did a great job at explaining exactly that.
Yeah, because I mean, I would imagine it's a program that impacts the people on the ground. It's a program that as I understand it, it helps the vulnerable, the most vulnerable. For example, if you have a community that needs a clinic, lacking in health services, the program, through this program, an organization can come and develop or establish a healthcare center per se and offer these services. So I see where it impacts communities. If you would, Sydney or my friend Christine, speak to what it means to you personally working with this program and seeing the impact in the lives that I did.
Yeah, that's a really nice question. Thank you for that. Well, for me, I worked with small NGOs in my past. So just being able to support grassroots organizations to the larger organizations that are really filling some of these gaps, making the connections between government and civil society and communities, that to me is where the magic happens. I mean, yeah, I don't know if I can even say it better than that. I feel very honored to be able to help support this program through the U.S. Embassy, but also the fact that we get to work with really inspiring organizations.
What are some? Can you give some examples of some organizations that have applied and have gotten this grant here in Belize and their success stories, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've gotten to meet a couple that are super inspiring. I think I'm going to let Christine talk a bit more about the details.
Some of the organizations we've worked with in the past or who've been awarded grants, where we have the Love Foundation, we have Humana, People for People, People to People, we have Trust for the Americas, we have Youth Enhancement Services, which recently closed the grant. When we talk about successes, we're looking at projects that developed, help to develop curriculum and work with the Ministry of Education to enhance the curriculum or enhance the education sector. We have projects that looked at this enhancing health services. Right now we have a project with Belize Heroes that is working with firefighters. And one of the things, when we're talking about successes, we're looking at building capacity of our firefighters. that's success in itself, and elevating their responsibilities to doing emergency response, providing that emergency response services. While that project is still ongoing, we already see some of those successes and in building capacity, which is key. Once you're trained, they always say, build capacity, and it never leaves. So those are some of the wonderful things that the projects have done.
How long has this program been in existence?
Well, CARSE ESF was initiated in Belize in 2012. 2012, and since then we have provided support to non-profit organizations and provided funding in about a little over $9.3 million.
Wow.
Since 2012.
So a decade of this program.
Yes.
$9.3 million. Yeah, I think it's interesting. Perhaps more needs to be done in terms of highlighting all that this program has done, because we're sitting here and I'm listening and I'm hearing, fire service, healthcare, education. I'm hearing all of these stuff, and I work in the newsroom, so perhaps I have encountered some groundbreaking. Maybe I've encountered some opening of different locations where these things happen, where these monies are invested. If we could delve a bit into what good governance means in this program, and perhaps a couple examples of good governance there. And I'm sure you may have mentioned it a bit, but just to speak about what we mean when we speak about good governance and how this program supports that.
Well, just to comment on the first part of your statement, that makes us feel really good that you want to hear more. And we have some initiatives in the works to get more information out there, because these are really inspiring and awesome stories, amazing organizations. I had the opportunity to meet several of the groups working on these projects recently, thanks to Christine's initiative through the U.S. Embassy, and it was so inspiring. I think when we talk about good governance, it's a good question because we do keep it a little bit broad. But as Christine has been describing, that can actually manifest in a couple of different ways. So we say service delivery, that also sounds a bit broad, but really it's about these important kind of like pieces of just life for everyday people, and that could just be education curriculum, improving the curriculum, improving like trainings for supervisors of teachers. That's a project that's happening now. These pieces that, as a person who's not an education expert myself, I might not be thinking about, but it's so important in the Belizean educational context. There are other pieces that we should talk about in terms of good governance?
In terms of good governance, we're also looking at, when we're talking about anti-corruption, how do we address those? It's looking at improving some of the, enhancing transparency in service delivery, for example. And we have projects with, for example, with Trust for the Americas that look at innovative projects to take us from that paper-based way of doing things and take us to technology. And there are projects that are upcoming that look at enhancing those opportunities. So good governance is a wide topic and a focus. And in our notice of funding opportunity, we have specific objectives for when developing the proposal. So they must meet one or all three of the objectives that are listed within the notice of funding opportunity. And I can talk about it over and over. But it helps to take a look at the notice of funding opportunity and have a clear understanding of what is being requested, and it provides examples of some of the areas or some of the activities that would be feasible, but it's not limiting. Don't limit yourself. And I always say, when you're developing these proposals, think about your audience, think about the people who are reviewing. We have absolutely no idea about what initiative or mandate your organization has. So sell this project idea to me, sell it to me so that I want to buy it.
See, that was going to be my next question, because you often have new up and coming NGOs. This is the first time they're looking at grants, and they're hearing about grants that could support their initiative. Maybe they've never written a proposal before, or they might not know what needs to be in their proposal in order to make it like that seller. So what kind of advice would you give Jumpstart or first starting NGOs that want to write this proposal and might not know exactly what to put in it or what is important to have in it, and so forth?
So, well, two things.
Yes.
We have an upcoming, I can speak about this all day. We have an upcoming question and answer session that will dive into the notice of funding opportunity and break it down and provide feedback and examples. And this is a great opportunity for the public, and especially for organizations that will be new, to be able to ask the questions that they want about the process, about what project activities might be more feasible, and on what sections. The notice of funding opportunity also provides details on what developing a proposal, what are some of the sections that are required. You know, you need your executive summary that provides that general overview. If there's nothing else that the panel will pick up, it's the executive summary. So make sure that information, what I want to achieve, what the impact will be, how I plan to do it, and at what cost. Those are the key things that would, for example, go in your executive summary. But that sort of details would be available during our question and answer session that's happening on the 4th of May, and it will be a Facebook Live event. So you can tune in and ask your questions via Facebook, or send us an email at Bemopan-Carsey, spell out the Bemopan, Carsey ESF at state.gov, and send your questions, or give us a call at the embassy, and we'd be happy to help. There are other resources, templates that are also made available for organizations that are, might be new, or just want to be a bit more familiar with what the requirements are for a good proposal, a sound proposal.
Have you ever had proposals come in that are so lofty and unfeasible, but are commendable because of the objectives that the organization is seeking to meet?
Of course.
Yeah.
We always have those. It's always it's $500,000 for this cycle, but it's never enough.
It's never enough.
You know, when you have 30 proposals that come in and you only have a small pot of funds, or a pot of funds available. So we always have the proposals that are great, wonderful proposal, but it is a competitive process. And so we have a panel that makes the decision based on technical criteria on who would be who would be recommended for these funding.
And the needs out there, I'm sure the U.S. Embassy, you've done your research and you know what are the needs out there in terms of the objectives that the project seeks to meet. However, are you ever perhaps surprised, or do you, during the process, learn of new needs or new objectives or arena investments?
Well, I've only been in Belize for a couple of months, so I'm learning constantly. So the research that I had done coming into my role, I've learned an immense amount just through knowing about the projects that are being supported through Carsey ESF. Have you been surprised? Yes.
And what we try to do is that we review the proposals, and we then look at what were some of the needs and what were some of that reoccurring proposals, or the reoccurring ideas, and then we try to feed that into the next cycle, or other opportunities that might come up throughout the year, so we're able to meet the needs, because the notice of funding opportunity is created, the area of focus is based on the decision from Congress, but it also is aligned with what the needs are for the country. So that is key.
Does each proposal require a level of a budget in it, so that you can see how the funds will be distributed? And then does that sway your decision making, as well as being able to provide for a good amount of organizations? So because you have 500,000, I imagine that could be distributed among at least 3 or 4 organizations.
We hope so.
Yeah?
We hope so, yeah. I think we'll take a look at what the organizations are asking for based on their project. So it's more about looking at how they propose to use the funds.
Yeah, and it's important to note that all the proposals, well, after initial screening for eligibility, making sure they meet the main eligibility requirements, and make sure it's a complete proposal, then it goes to a panel that neither myself or Sydney sits on. So it goes to a technical panel who reviews it based on different criteria: content, sustainability, the budget, making sure it's aligned with the budget, and making sure that the expenses or the activities are allowable and feasible. And that panel makes then makes a recommendation for whether or not these proposals go further to the other step and are approved by our charge of their affairs. So there is a process, and in terms of whether or not organizations want to know what that technical review entails, the notice of funding opportunity has a section that's specifically on how the proposals are scored. So I recommend that if organizations are interested in applying, take a look at the NOFO, take a look at the sections of the proposals that we look for, and also take a very keen look at the technical review criteria, so that you know exactly what this panel is looking for, and making sure that in developing your proposal, it meets those needs. For example, sustainability. After I've given you this $250,000 and activities have been completed over a 2-year period, what next? That is also key. What next? How do we look at sustainability, and also looking at the impact? What impact will this project have? If I'm going to do training, I'm not just expecting that from a technical review point, it's not just looking at I'm going to train 50 individuals, but we train them, and then what happens afterward? What's going to be the outcome? What's going to be the impact? Are you going back to your organization and put in place making changes to policies so we have better outcomes? So that sort of thing are the things that we definitely do look at.
If you're granting an organization such a large sum of money, I would imagine there is also monitoring and accountability in the process of implementation, correct?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. Well, I'm not the subject matter expert in this part. Christine definitely would be. But of course, we want to make sure that not only are we there to support the organizations that we've been investing in, but also that we're there to make sure that they're moving forward on their path, right?
Exactly. And we do the follow-up. We will do the site visits, both technical and financial. So we look at what has been happening and making sure, and it's the site visits or the reviews aren't only for us to say, are you really doing what you're supposed to be doing? But it's also an opportunity for us to sit down and talk about what are some of the challenges maybe you might have in implementation, and the grant officer, Sydney, would look at, how do we fix this? How can we help? What type of support we can provide? It's always key. The project management process, communication is a key part of that process. Letting us know the good and the bad, so that assistance, whatever the technical assistance, can definitely be provided in a timely fashion.
I was gonna that was gonna be my next question. Is there a time frame that the project needs to be implemented and completed within a particular cycle in order to fit the eligibility to get this grant?
So the projects have to be implemented over a 2-year period. A 2-year. Okay. And expected start is at the end of September. So
this
October. Yes.
So let's as we bring it to a wrap, in terms of so it's open. You have to call for applications. It's open. Where can persons go to send in their applications or to get more information, and what's the deadline?
Absolutely. Yes, so it is open now. We're very excited. It's technically called the Notice of Funding Opportunity, as Christine has mentioned, but basically it's a call for proposals, exactly like you said. So it is available on grants.gov. You can also find it through our website. You can also find it on our Facebook. And we're going to be posting about it on our Facebook pretty regularly. So the links will be there and available.
Yeah, and the closing date is?
And the closing date is June 2nd.
At midnight.
I have the last seconds are important.
The last second is important.
So, and also remember, we have the Q&A session, the question and answer session that is going to be happening, and a great opportunity for the public to ask the questions that they might have. And we'd have the grant officer there providing answers and responses for those questions that might be necessary. So feel free. This is a perfect opportunity to ask those questions that maybe you're not seeing enough information about about a particular area, or you're unsure, or you need additional technical assistance. That is definitely where you need to do it. Please do not ask the questions if it's 1 week before the day, before June 2nd, and that's when you're asking all the questions, because you might, you know, it's not enough time.
Yes.
Develop a proposal development process takes some time. It definitely does take some time, and don't wait for the last minute, because then you miss out on a great opportunity. This is free money. All you have to do is make sure you are delivering on what you're supposed to. So,
any last words for our viewers? Anything else that you might want them to know?
I think mostly that we're just really excited that this is happening now.
Yeah.
I personally am very thrilled to see the projects that come in once we get to that stage.
Yeah.
So just sending encouragement out to organizations to please, please apply, take advantage of the opportunity. Do read the notice of funding opportunity, and please don't be overwhelmed. We know that it can be a competitive and tedious, potentially, process, but take it as a challenge and also an opportunity.
and again, ask your questions. Reach out and ask your questions. You know, if you don't ask, we don't know that you need the assistance and the support. And we will be constantly, from now all up to June 2nd, we'll be constantly putting out information on our Facebook page. Different templates, different information, like, did you know this? You know, different tips that can be extremely helpful. And another tip is, remember that you can reach out to an organization. If you're a smaller upcoming organization, reach out to maybe a more established organization to give you a little bit of tips. You know, that mentoring relationship, reach out to them. So remember, the deadline is the 2nd of June. Our Q&A session is on the 4th of May at 2 p.m. We have the flyer and information on our website, belize.usembassy.gov, and also on our Facebook page. All the information is there.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing some of the projects that will come out of this program. And so at the end of this year, going into next year, we'll look out to see some of the beginning of some of those projects. Ladies, thank you both so much for traveling all the way from Belmopan to be here with us on such an early morning, and do hope you both have a safe and dry Thursday. So with that, we'll wrap up this segment and we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we have the folks over there at Digi who will be joining us in the studio to talk all about Digi Wallet, Digi Promotions, DigiNet, everything Digi. You don't want to miss that, so stay tuned.